Back in February, First Energy announced plans for a new facility on a 35-acre site near its Fort Martin power station in Maysville. That'll be a new 1,200-megawatt natural gas power plant. Site work could begin as early as 2027, plant coming online in 2031. Joining us from First Energy, the Vice President of Generation Development, Chris Beam. He joins us from the Metro News Charleston studios this morning. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning.
Appreciate you coming in. Do you have any TJ Meadows stories you can share with us, by the way? Any you can tell on the air?
I do, but none I can tell, yes.
All right. That'll be for Talkline After Dark, the podcast later on. Hey, appreciate you coming in. Let's start with this site up by the Fort Martin plant. What makes this an appropriate site? What makes this a good site for a natural gas generation facility?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, one, we have a coal facility right there, the Fort Martin plant. We did 28 different site evaluations to try to determine the best site to build this facility on. And when you look at a lot of things, right, you're looking at gas supply, you're looking at how close you are to the transmission system, water supply, all those types of things. And this site it came to the top very quickly. Because all those things exist at that site, it keeps our costs down to the customer to build it there, and it's also the infrastructure's kind of in place to support building it there. So it's a really good selection for us, and I think very good for the area.
So it is going to be a gas plant, is my understanding. Talk to us about why gas, and Chris, maybe talk to us a little bit about efficiency of combined cycle. I'm thinking that's what that's going to be.
Yeah. So TJ, you're right. It is a combined cycle, and what that really means is it'll have 2 gas turbines. We'll use exhaust gas off of that to heat water, to make steam, and then we'll run a steam turbine off of that. So a 2-on-1 configuration combined cycle plant. Heat efficiency, it's the best heat efficiency for any type of geothermal, any type of conversion to electricity. It's the most efficient way to do it currently.
And that means the best possible price for a customer.
The lowest price per kilowatt hour usage is the best way to do it, yeah. It's very efficient. It's low emissions compared to other sources that are converting any type of fuel over to electricity. So, and it's a proven technology. It's not something new. This technology's been out for a long time. It's been developed. It's been optimized, and it's just a good selection for us.
Chris Beam joining us, Vice President of Generation Development with First Energy. How many jobs are we talking about at this plant up in next to Fort Martin?
Yeah, and so that is a difference between I would say, look at your traditional coal-fired plant versus a traditional gas plant like this. Fort Martin, a little over 100 some odd employees at the facility. At the coal plant, this plant will employ roughly about 30 employees when we're all done. It will create, though, well over 1,000 construction jobs, and this will be built with union trade labor, which we're pretty proud of that, and I think you get the best product when you use that labor to build it.
One of the questions I hear is, why do you need a new plant?
Yeah, it's good. So load growth, right? So right now we have our Harrison station by Fairmont, and we have our Fort Martin station by Morgantown. Both are base load assets, which means they basically run wide open when they're in service, and that meets our need today. What it will not do is meet our need tomorrow. So we have a very long list of customers that are inquiring about new service from us, and that new service will start in the 28 timeframe and then continue out through the future. Not allowed to disclose who they are, of course, but these requests are large requests. You're talking 600 megawatts, 1,000 megawatts, and we're building one 1,200 megawatt facility here. So in all intents and purposes, one customer could really consume this entire facility.
You're kind of already transitioning. We wanted to also bring up data centers, and can you put into context for an average guy like me who pays my power bills on time, but put into context the massive load data centers, the ones that connect to the grid, are going to put on the grid as we move forward and these sites develop and these sites continue to grow across the country.
Yeah, so they certainly will put a demand on the grid. One thing I will say, though, at least for First Energy, we are in the PJM interconnect, and they're the ones that are responsible for the transmission planning as a whole, along with the generation assets. And so before you're literally allowed to add anything to the grid like that, it has to go through a detailed planning process. And then out of that process, it'll basically say, if you want to add an asset at a certain size, you have to make these upgrades to the system so you don't cause any system issues. And so those costs will be borne by the customer that creates that issue because they want to locate in a certain area or a certain location. And then, of course, the generation piece comes with that also. And what we are saying is those customers will also then pick up their piece of the generation that they create. And so it's a way to protect your existing customers. It's a way to keep things affordable for your existing customers, but also a way that you make sure reliability is first and foremost, because that's the one thing we focus on.
So you hit on something that I want to drill into a little bit, this whole idea of cost causation. There's a lot of narratives out there. And full disclosure, I used to work in the energy industry. I've said that numerous times. I don't want people to say, oh, he's on shilling again, doing what he does. It is what it is. But with that said, the way these costs would be allocated, some have said, well, you're building a new plant. That's, we're going to have to pay for that. The data centers are the ones that would benefit if it is a data center, et cetera, et cetera. But you talked a little bit there about how the rate design would prevent that. Talk a bit more and go a bit deeper with that.
Yeah, so let's start with what I'll call the traditional rate design. Traditional rate design in the past was if you had enough load growth to need a new asset, you would build a new asset. You would go to the Public Service Commission in West Virginia. You would basically say, my long-term planning says I need to add an asset. This is the asset we believe is the right asset, and we believe this is the cost. And you would seek approval for that. If approval was given, those costs would be basically passed off to the existing customer base. That's the standard way it works. Under this new format, some of this new facility we're going to build will be for the general customer that we have today. We have growth in the Eastern Panhandle that's pretty significant. We have to meet that growth. So some of the output of this new facility will go there. So for that output, that'll follow that kind of traditional rate-making process. Under these big, large load customers, our intent and our belief is going to be is that if a customer comes on board, and and I'm making numbers up, someone wants 1,000 megawatts of load, then we're going to basically say we'll do a special contract with that customer, and in that special contract, we will prove out that they will cover all costs associated with that 1,000 megawatts. And so the existing customer base won't be paying for that 1,000 megawatts. That'll be done in a special contract. That special contract has to go to the Public Service Commission for approval. And in that process, we prove out in the math how that works, that you are basically protecting your existing customer base for that 1,000 megawatts. The other 200 for this facility may go to just general customer base. And that's how this would work.
Just to reiterate, you hit on something. You and the counterparty can't unilaterally execute that deal. It has to go to the commission, and they have to approve it.
So the beauty about West Virginia being a fully integrated state, where what that means is the Public Service Commission has transmission, distribution, and generation under their purview. That means if you want to do a deal with a third party, your customer, that deal goes back to the PSC for their approval. And their job is to make sure that, one, rates are fair, two, rates are the right people are paying their fair share of the rates. And we are a big supporter of that process. We think that process exists and protects the existing customer.
Chris Beam is joining us, Vice President of Generation Development at First Energy. I hope this is not a depressing question, but do we have enough generation facilities to handle the demands that are going to be coming in the next few decades ahead?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think if you ask that question today and do the math, the answer is no today. I would say, I would just call it the industry, the electric industry responding. I think the answer is yes to that. Where we have to be careful, though, is we have to match load with generation. And that has to kind of match in real time, unfortunately. And so what you're seeing is one of the things that's kind of hampering the process is availability of equipment. So there's a few vendors that kind of make this really big equipment globally. And the problem is this is a global issue. It's not a West Virginia issue. It's not a U.S. issue. And so you have to get yourself in line, and you have to get in line to buy the equipment. You have to reserve the equipment with dollars, and you have to do that now much earlier in the process. So if you'd have asked me that question 5 years ago, I would have told you we could build this plant in 3 years and we would be good to go. It now takes 5 years, not to build it, but to get all the equipment so you can build it. And so you have to start planning much earlier in the process, start committing much earlier in the process to make sure the end date, or what I'll call the operational date of your new asset, meets when the load needs to be there.
When you look at all of the vast natural resources that we have here, and obviously First Energy is investing with a plant, there's always, Chris, this criticism of, oh, well, we're going to ship megawatts out on a wire and we don't get the benefit and these kinds of things. Now, granted, we get more benefit with the data centers here. But talk about, I have, and maybe wrongly, I have said, look, megawatts are a product. Ship it out. It's good for the states. Am I right or wrong?
You are right. So the way it works, the Public Service Commission has this set up and how the rules work. So let's just assume that First Energy has more energy than our customers need. And so we ship that energy out into the PJM marketplace. It is purchased by the PJM marketplace, and the purchase cost of that comes back to the West Virginia customer as a credit to their bill. And so while maybe the West Virginia customer is paying for the cost of that asset to invest and build it, the return comes from selling the excess into the market, and it becomes 100% return back to the customer for that value. And so it is a very good place to be. It aligns heavily with the governor's 50 by 50 plan. He realizes the value of generation in the state, and the whole point that you've made, TJ, about if I'm going to use what I need here and the excess, I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to bring that money back into the state in some form of credit back to the customer base. So it's a very good proposition.
Chris Beam joining us, Vice President, Generation Development at First Energy. So what does First Energy need, or what does any generation company need to be encouraged, let me put it that way, encouraged to build more facilities or to invest more into generation here in West Virginia specifically?
Yeah, so first thing you need is certainly you need a customer base, right? So you have to have the load that's requiring the need for the generation. We now have that, and that is a good place to be from a utility perspective. But you need more than that. You need support from your local legislators. You need support from your governor's office, of course. You need support from the PSC. And most importantly, you need support from the local people that are going to be around this facility. We pride ourselves in being a very good neighbor. We've done it for many, many years in this community, and we'll continue to do that. But those are really kind of the main things you need to support to build this stuff. These are big projects. They take a long time to build. It causes disruption for the folks that live adjacent to the build. But in the end, when you're done, they probably won't even realize it's there. And that's the beauty.
We talk on the show quite a bit about the difficulty of building new generation, just the permitting process. I mean, you can handle the question. I mean, tell us a little bit about it. It's not as easy as people may think.
It is correct.
To get all of this done.
Yeah, I think so. We've put together a permitting matrix for this new facility, and I don't want to, but we're looking at well over 300 different types of permits required to build this facility. Some are federal, some are state, and some are local. And you have to meet those in certain time frames to make sure you meet your end all day of being in service. But I will give a huge shout out to West Virginia and to the governor and their direction. They have streamlined the permitting process in the state of West Virginia, and they are very proactive in helping us get that done. And that's a partnership that we're glad to have.
Vice President of Generation Development at First Energy, Chris Beam. Hey, Chris, appreciate you coming in studio this morning, and make sure you stick around for the After Dark podcast so we can tell TJ stories later.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Chris. Thanks for stopping by.